There are nights when even the strongest souls break. On this one, the sky over rural Vermont was a bruised, heavy gray, snow falling in thick curtains, blanketing the world in silence and fear. The Collier Haven mansion, Victorian, sprawling, lost in the woods, glowed with flashing police lights, blue and red strobing against frosted windows. Inside, Officer Ryan Walker slumped on the old hardwood floor, cradling two shivering girls, one barely more than a toddler, the other fighting to keep her eyes open, as a battered German shepherd pressed against his knee. Medics thundered in, voices sharp with urgency, but in the silence between their words you could hear it. The echo of 4 long days, every second carved by desperation, hope, and the threat of loss. 4 days earlier the world had been quieter, but for Ryan, every sunrise felt a little colder. He'd never gotten used to the emptiness after his wife passed away, never learned how to fill the spaces her laughter left behind. He'd poured himself into his job as a K-9 officer, but after an accident ended his career, even the badge couldn't shield him from the ache. Now, most days, he worked quietly as a volunteer with the county's search and rescue, taking on the cases no one else wanted. Maybe that's why, when the sheriff called at midnight about 2 missing girls, Ryan didn't hesitate. Some wounds never close, but sometimes helping others can slow the bleeding. The blizzard was already building as he loaded up his truck with gear, first aid kit, rope, flashlight, and, most importantly, the crate holding Atlas, a German shepherd with a legacy as haunted as his own. Atlas's eyes, deep and gold, watched every move with cautious hope and simmering fear. Once he'd been the pride of the force, a legend among K-9s. But after a bust gone wrong and the abrupt disappearance of his former handler, Atlas was a shell, jittery and withdrawn, recently abandoned and shuffled between shelters. Most handlers didn't want a dog that flinched at loud noises or refused to track. Ryan, maybe out of stubbornness or recognition of a fellow lost soul, said yes. The case was already headline material. Lily, 3 years old, couldn't speak. Maddie, 10, needed daily heart medication. Their mother had been found unconscious in their home after trying to reach help during the storm. The girls were gone, tracks leading into the deepening woods. As the storm battered the region, volunteers, police, and neighbors banded together, forming search parties that combed every mile of snow and shadow. Ryan met the girl's aunt, Mrs. Holloway, outside the sheriff's office. Her voice shook as she handed over a faded photograph. "Maddie's responsible. She takes care of Lily," she whispered, eyes wide with terror. "But Maddie's heart, she needs her medicine. If they're out there all night..." The words failed her. Ryan offered the only thing he could, a steady hand and a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. By dusk, the woods were a maze of ghostly branches and powdery snowdrifts. Atlas moved at Ryan's side, ears flat, nose twitching at the scent of strangers, rescue workers, local hunters, and off-duty firemen. The search chief's voice crackled through the radio. "Temperature dropping, visibility near zero. If you find anything, call it in. Don't try to be a hero." Ryan gritted his teeth and pressed on, knowing heroism was just what these girls needed. They found the first clue near an abandoned snowmobile, a pink mitten, half frozen, sticking out of a drift. Ryan knelt in the snow and let Atlas sniff it. The dog's whole body went rigid, tail low. "Come on, boy," Ryan urged, gentle but firm. "We need you." But Atlas whimpered, backing away, his breaths quick and shallow. Somewhere deep inside, the memory of gunfire and screams still haunted him. The handler before Ryan had never come home. Atlas had waited for days at the kennel gate before the news finally came. Now, the leash felt like a lifeline and a threat. Other teams called in, reporting nothing but fox tracks and fallen branches. As hours passed, hope frayed like rope under strain. Ryan felt the edge of panic. He wasn't just fighting the storm, he was fighting time. Maddie's medication was running out, and Lily's inability to speak made her even harder to find. He tried everything, coaxing, commands, even offering Atlas a scrap of Maddie's favorite blanket from home. "It's okay," Ryan murmured, voice shaking from cold and frustration. "You're not alone, Atlas. Neither are they." For a long moment, the world stood still, just Ryan's breath misting in the air, the storm closing in, Atlas's eyes searching his for something he could trust. Then something shifted. Atlas pressed his nose to the mitten, nostrils flaring, body tense with sudden purpose. He looked at Ryan and barked, a sharp, guttural sound, filled with more than fear, hope, and maybe defiance. Ryan rose, heart pounding. "Good boy, let's go find them." As they plunged off the main trail, leaving behind the search party's lanterns and familiar shouts, Ryan realized this was no longer just about two missing girls. It was about every person, every animal who had ever been left behind in the storm, about finding each other in the dark, and maybe, if they were lucky, finding themselves again. The snow deepened, the wind howled, and somewhere ahead, the lights of Collier Haven flickered through the trees, a mansion forgotten by time, waiting to reveal its secrets. Ryan pulled his scarf higher, feeling the cold gnaw through every layer, but there was no turning back now. Atlas, driven by some spark that even Ryan didn't fully understand, surged ahead, nose to the ground, paws churning up fresh snow. The wind whipped hard, stinging Ryan's face, carrying with it the eerie silence of a world suspended in storm. All around them, trees bent under the weight of snow, creaking like ancient bones. Somewhere far off, the distant rumble of thunder warned of even worse weather to come. The rest of the search party was a vague collection of shifting lanterns and bundled figures in the growing darkness, their shouts echoing but quickly swallowed by the storm. The radios crackled and popped, but words were lost to static. "Stay in contact!" someone barked, but Ryan barely heard. Atlas, tail rigid, yanked at the leash, insistent. Ryan trusted the dog's instincts more than anything now. "Easy, boy," he murmured, boots crunching over a downed branch as they veered off the main path and into the untamed forest. Branches snapped back, slapping Ryan's arms, and the snow thickened, blurring every shape, turning the woods into a maze. Ryan's mind churned with worst-case scenarios. Hypothermia, the girls lost and terrified, Maddie's heart medicine running out. He forced the thoughts aside and focused on the now, on each step, each sign, and Atlas's powerful determination. Suddenly, Atlas hesitated, sniffing at a patch of disturbed snow. Ryan crouched, shining his flashlight. There, nearly hidden, were tiny footprints and the scrap of a scarf. A jolt of hope shot through him. "That's it, buddy," Ryan said, letting Atlas scent the fabric. The dog whined, then barked twice, urgent, desperate. Ryan radioed in, voice tight. "Walker here. We've got tracks heading northeast off Ridge Trail. Send backup if you can, but I'm moving forward." The reply was a burst of static, then, "Roger, be careful, Walker. Storm's getting bad." Atlas darted ahead, weaving through trees, the leash barely containing his speed. Ryan stumbled after him, breath burning in his chest, snow blinding him at every turn. The temperature seemed to drop by the minute, his gloves soaked, fingers stiff. The flashlight beam shook in his hand, the light sometimes catching a glimpse of pink or blue in the snow before it vanished. Each time they lost the tracks, Ryan's heart would drop, but Atlas would circle, nose buried deep, until he picked up the trail again. The dog's focus was absolute now, all fear pushed aside by purpose. At one point, a tree crashed to the ground just yards away, a thunderous snap that sent flurries flying. Ryan ducked instinctively, shielding his head, and Atlas pressed close, both of them panting. For a moment, Ryan locked eyes with the dog. "We're not quitting," he said, almost to himself. But the odds were turning against them. Sean's radio died first, batteries drained by the cold. The snow came harder, nearly blinding, and Ryan knew that the girls, if they were still alive, were running out of time. Every search and rescue training he'd ever had played through his mind. Look for shelter, listen for cries, check low places where children might hide from the wind. He called out, his voice barely carrying, "Maddie, Lily, can you hear me?" There was no answer, just the whistling wind. Atlas paused again at a half-buried log. There, another mitten, smaller than the first, dusted with ice. Ryan's throat tightened. He checked his watch. They'd been out here for hours. Sadie's window for her next dose of medication had passed. Every second mattered. Suddenly, Atlas's whole posture changed. The dog's hackles rose, ears pricked forward, a low growl vibrating in his chest. Ryan's nerves crackled. Was it just the wind or something else? He swept his flashlight in a wide arc and saw nothing, just shadows, trees, and endless white. He exhaled, shaky. "It's okay, Atlas. Focus. Let's keep going." They crested a ridge, the world dropping away beneath them, the view opening onto a ravine choked with snow and fallen branches. Atlas whined, then barked sharply, tugging Ryan toward the edge. Below, Ryan could just make out a blur of color, something blue, wedged in a hollow beneath a fallen tree. His heart leapt. "Stay," he commanded, then slid down the embankment, snow filling his boots, his knees slamming into ice. He crawled forward, breath puffing in clouds, but it wasn't a girl, just Maddie's backpack, straps torn. Inside, a nearly empty pill bottle rattled. Ryan's gut clenched. He scanned the area. There was no sign of the girls. Just as despair began to close in, Atlas started barking wildly, running in circles. Ryan scrambled up the embankment, heart in his throat, following the dog deeper into the woods. A few minutes later, Atlas stopped dead, nose pointed at a narrow, nearly invisible path winding through dense thickets. Ryan hesitated. This wasn't any regular trail. It looked like an old service road, half lost to time, hidden from view by snow-laden branches. But Atlas pawed at the ground, eyes fixed on Ryan, insistent. With no other hope, Ryan nodded. "Lead the way." They fought through the brush, every step harder, until suddenly, looming out of the snow like a ghost, appeared the Collier Haven mansion. Its iron gates hung open, the driveway buried, windows dark. Legends in the town said it was haunted, that strange lights had been seen flickering inside. Ryan didn't care about ghosts. He cared about the two little girls lost somewhere inside this maze of history and snow. As they approached, the wind dropped for a moment, and Ryan heard it. A faint sound, almost like crying, carried on the icy air. "Hang on, I'm coming," he whispered, adrenaline surging. Atlas pressed close to his leg, both man and dog drawn toward the unknown, toward hope, toward whatever waited in the dark, empty halls of Collier Haven. The storm howled outside, but inside, something was about to change forever. The wind slammed the front doors behind them as Ryan and Atlas crossed the threshold into Collier Haven, snow swirling in their wake, flashlight trembling in Ryan's gloved hand. The mansion felt more like a mausoleum than a sanctuary, air heavy with dust and secrets, echoes lingering in each shadowed hallway. Even Atlas, usually unflappable when on scent, hesitated, ears pricked and eyes scanning the gloom, as if he sensed not just the presence of the girls, but something older, something sorrowful in the bones of this place. They moved deeper, past stained glass windows frosted white, their colors only hinted at in the storm-muted daylight. Ryan's boots thudded across warped wooden floors as he swept his light over peeling wallpaper, then up the grand staircase where cobwebs shivered with every gust. Each step forward made his pulse hammer harder. Was it the fear of finding the girls too late, or the mansion's own oppressive history pressing in? Atlas paused at the foot of a corridor lined with faded portraits. Men in military uniforms, women in nurses' caps, all stiff and unsmiling. One painting caught Ryan's eye. A young soldier with a K9 dog, medals shining on his chest, both gazing outward with a pride that bordered on haunted. The sight stabbed at Ryan, stirring memories of his own years in uniform, the bond with his late wife, the weight of loss still chained to his chest. "Stay with me, boy," he whispered, reaching down to rest a trembling hand on Atlas's back. The dog's nose twitched, and he pulled forward, suddenly urgent, weaving through toppled furniture and forgotten trunks. A battered door hung crooked at the end of the hall. Atlas stopped, pressed his body low, and whined, eyes locked on the crack beneath it. Ryan crouched, heart thudding. "Maddie? Lily?" His voice was barely a whisper, but in the stillness it rang like thunder. No answer. Just the muffled sob of wind, the creak of the old house settling. Ryan tried the handle. It stuck, frozen with age, but Atlas growled, then barked sharply. A tiny whimper answered, a sound so soft Ryan almost missed it. He shoved his shoulder against the door, once, twice, until it finally groaned open. Inside, in the dusky gloom of an old coat closet, two small figures huddled together. Maddie, pale and trembling, her arms wrapped tight around Lily, whose huge eyes shone with terror. Maddie's lips were blue, her breaths shallow, and she clutched an empty medicine bottle like a talisman. Lily, silent as a ghost, pressed herself into the corner, her hands over her ears. Hey, it's okay," Ryan said, lowering himself slowly, making his voice as gentle as he could. "I'm here to help. My name's Ryan. I work with search and rescue. You're safe now. Lily? Maddie?" Atlas, sensing the girl's distress, crouched low, tail wagging tentatively. He gave a soft, reassuring bark, and Lily's eyes flicked to him, wide with a mixture of hope and fear. Maddie blinked, fighting to focus. Mom said help would come," she breathed, voice ragged. "Lily, she hasn't talked since Daddy died. She's scared of everyone." Ryan nodded, fighting back his own tears. He reached into his coat for a granola bar, breaking off a piece and holding it out. "You must be hungry. Here, take it slow." Maddie's hand shook as she accepted it, nibbling while trying to coax Lily to eat. Atlas inched forward, laying his big head on Lily's knee, and after a frozen moment, she buried her fingers in his fur, clinging to him as if he was the only thing keeping her from vanishing altogether. Ryan checked Maddie's pulse, weak and thready. He knew from his briefing the girl had a congenital heart defect, and her last dose of medication was hours overdue. "Maddie, I need you to be brave for a little longer, okay? I have a first aid kit. I'm going to give you something to help, but we need to stay warm. Can you walk?" Maddie nodded, determined despite her exhaustion. Ryan wrapped both girls in his parka and led them into the main parlor, where faded velvet couches circled a crumbling stone fireplace. He managed to coax a tiny flame from old wood scraps, the light flickering over shelves crowded with military memorabilia, dog tags, medals, sepia-toned photos of handlers and their dogs through decades of war and peace. The mansion's walls seemed to whisper their own stories, of rescues, of families lost and found, of loyalty unbroken by time. Ryan felt the echoes resonate with his own longing for redemption. He gently administered a dose from Maddie's emergency medicine, praying it would hold her until help arrived. As the girls warmed by the fire, Ryan explored the parlor, drawn by the artifacts that lined the shelves. One photo, cracked and yellowed, showed a rescue team huddled in this very room, a German Shepherd front and center. Scrawled on the back, "To those who save the lost, never give up hope." Atlas settled beside Lily, who gradually relaxed, her grip loosening, her breathing steadying. Maddie watched Ryan with haunted eyes. "Is Atlas? Is he a rescue too?" Ryan nodded. "Yeah, he's been through a lot, but he's strong, just like you two." A sudden bang made all three jump, just a shutter slamming in the wind. But in that instant, Ryan realized the true danger wasn't over. They were safe for now, but the storm was worsening. The mansion's walls groaning with each blast of wind, snow piling up against doors and windows. The radio was still dead, and Ryan's phone had lost its signal hours ago. Rescue might be farther away than he dared admit. He spent the next hour searching the mansion for anything useful: blankets, canned food, candles. In an upstairs office, he found more relics: old journals, letters, notes about rescue missions gone right and wrong. Every line a reminder that sometimes the bravest thing is simply refusing to give up. When Ryan returned to the parlor, Lily had crawled fully into Atlas's lap, eyes closed, lips moving in silent prayer. Maddie's color was a little better, but she shivered uncontrollably. Ryan wrapped them both tight and promised, "I won't let anything happen to you. We'll get out of this together." Outside, the wind howled, shaking the old mansion to its core. But inside, for the first time in days, hope flickered, fragile but alive. Outside, the blizzard roared like some hungry animal clawing at the walls of Collier Haven, snow piling so high against the door that it rattled with every blast of wind. Inside, the old mansion was a fragile oasis, a place caught between the past and the present, hope and despair. Ryan worked quickly, layering the girls in every blanket and coat he could scrounge from trunks and closets, then building up the fire until the room was soaked in warmth and shifting shadows. Atlas lay close to the hearth, his breathing steady, ever-watchful eyes locked on Lily, as if he understood that she needed him more than anyone. The night deepened, and with it came silence, broken only by the crackling fire and Maddie's faint, erratic breathing. Ryan did his best to keep the conversation light, sharing stories about his own childhood winters, sledding down steep hills, the first dog he'd ever loved, the way hot chocolate tasted after a day in the snow. Maddie listened, occasionally managing a weak smile, but the worry in her eyes never left. Every so often, she glanced at the clock on the mantel, counting the hours since her last proper dose of heart medicine. Ryan caught her staring. "We're going to get you to a doctor, Maddie," he promised softly. "The storm can't last forever." She nodded, her jaw set with a courage beyond her years. "I know, I just can't let Lily down." Lily, for her part, barely moved except to curl closer to Atlas. She still hadn't spoken, not even when Maddie tried to coax her with whispered jokes or little songs. Her tiny hands twisted in the thick fur at the dog's neck, her eyes sometimes squeezing shut, as if to blot out the world. Ryan saw something of himself in that silence, a need to hide, to hold on tight to something safe when everything else fell away. As midnight approached, the storm outside hit its peak, shrieking down the chimneys and battering the windows so fiercely that Ryan checked each one, fearing they might shatter. The power flickered and failed, plunging them into true darkness. Ryan lit candles, arranging them around the parlor. Their soft glow painted everyone's faces in gold and shadow, making the room feel like a different time, a place out of reach from the world's cruelty. Sitting beside the girls, Ryan reached for his first aid kit and checked Maddie's pulse again, heart hammering as he counted the seconds. She was pale and cold, sweat beading on her forehead, but she smiled bravely. "I'm okay, really. Lily needs you more than me." Ryan squeezed her hand. "Lily needs you too, and you're not alone, Maddie, not anymore." Something shifted then. Maddie, her strength nearly spent, finally let herself lean against Ryan's side. She told him, in halting sentences, about the accident that took her dad, how her mom became so frail afterward, how Maddie had learned to hide her fear so Lily wouldn't see. She talked about the night they ran into the woods, how she'd bundled Lily in a coat, grabbed her medicine, and tried to follow the sound of sirens, but the storm swallowed them up. I thought if I was brave enough, maybe we'd find help. I just wanted to keep Lily safe. But then my heart started hurting, and Lily got scared." Ryan listened, letting Maddie's words wash over him, feeling the depth of her guilt, her strength, her desperate hope. He realized then how much she had taken on, how alone she must have felt. He looked at Lily, her little face half buried in Atlas's fur, and saw tears glistening on her cheeks. Atlas, sensing the pain in the room, nuzzled Lily's cheek with his wet nose. To Ryan's astonishment, Lily giggled, a thin, barely there sound, but real. Maddie's head snapped up. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Ryan nodded, heart swelling. "I did. I think Atlas is working his magic." Very slowly, Lily's small hand stroked the dog's neck, fingers tangling in his fur. She looked up at Maddie, then at Ryan. Her lips parted, and for the first time since her father's death, she spoke, so soft it was almost lost to the storm. "Atlas!" Maddie gasped, tears spilling over as she hugged her little sister tight. "She talked. Oh my God, she talked." Ryan blinked back tears of his own, unable to speak for a moment. Atlas wagged his tail, a soft, happy rumble vibrating in his chest, as if he understood just how important this moment was. Ryan reached out, resting a reassuring hand on Lily's shoulder. "He's here for you, sweetheart. We all are." For a while, they just sat together, the storm raging outside. But inside, warmth growing, a fragile thing but stronger than fear. Ryan told stories about the dogs on the mansion's old walls, reading the notes aloud from the old photographs he'd found. Brave animals who'd carried messages across battlefields, rescued wounded soldiers, comforted orphans in times of war. Each tale felt like a prayer, a reminder that even in the darkest times, the bond between human and animal could save lives, could restore hope. As Lily drifted into sleep, curled up beside Atlas, Maddie rested her head on Ryan's knee. "Do you think we'll get out of here?" she whispered. Ryan squeezed her hand. "I promise. I won't let anything happen to you. Tomorrow when the storm breaks, I'll find a way to get help. You have my word." Maddie closed her eyes, breathing deep, and for the first time since the nightmare began, she looked almost peaceful. Ryan sat awake most of the night, listening to the wind howl, watching the fire fade to embers, grateful for this moment of calm. In the darkness, he whispered a quiet thank you to whatever powers watched over lost souls, and to Atlas, whose gentle presence had become the thread that held them all together. In Collier Haven, hope flickered brighter than the storm, proof that even the most broken hearts could find shelter, and even the most wounded could find a reason to speak, to trust, to begin again. Morning crept in, slow, gray, and bitterly cold. Snow pressed heavy against every window, muffling the world in silence. Ryan woke stiff and sore from the floor, the fire barely embers. Atlas curled like a shadow beside Lily and Maddie. He checked the girls. Maddie was clammy but conscious. Lily still sleeping, her small hand tangled in Atlas's fur. Ryan gently touched Maddie's forehead and whispered, "Hang in there. The storm's letting up. Help should be coming." As he moved to stoke the fire and ration the last of the canned food, a chill crawled up his spine, a sense that the mansion was too still, the hush too complete. He brushed it off as nerves and exhaustion. Ryan forced himself to stay calm, focusing on Maddie's next dose and keeping the girls warm. But as he searched the cupboards for matches, a sound made his heart stutter. The sharp, metallic groan of the side door, muffled but unmistakable, echoing through the warren of empty halls. Atlas's ears shot up. He growled low, the sound vibrating in his chest. Ryan froze, holding a broken chair leg he'd scavenged for firewood. The hairs on his neck prickled as footsteps creaked across the back of the house. Heavy, deliberate, moving with a confidence that didn't belong to a rescuer or a lost soul. Ryan motioned Maddie to crouch behind the couch, pulling Lily with her. "Quiet. Someone's here." His own voice sounded alien, taut and controlled. Atlas pressed close, eyes locked on the parlor entrance, muscles coiled. A figure appeared in the doorway, a gaunt, wild-eyed man with a battered winter coat, days of stubble and a stare both frantic and cunning. In his hand was a crowbar. He stopped short, taking in the scene. The fire, the girls, the dog, and Ryan standing between them. "Don't move," Ryan said, planting his feet. "There are kids here. You don't want trouble." The man sneered. "I'm not here for them." His eyes darted past Ryan, scanning the shelves and corners, hungry and calculating. "I know about the stash. The old man hid it here and nobody's claimed it yet." Ryan's mind raced. This had to be Daryl Tuller. He'd read about him in the files. Maddie and Lily's estranged uncle just out of prison, nursing old grudges and old wounds. The kind of man who blamed everyone else for his pain. Ryan tightened his grip on the chair leg. "There's no money here, just us." Tuller snorted, circling the room, knocking over furniture with his crowbar, desperate for a hidden compartment or loose floorboard. "I waited years for this," he muttered. "My brother took everything, and now it's my turn." His gaze landed on Maddie, and something twisted in his face, an ugly blend of resentment and greed. "You know where it is, don't you? Your daddy always had secrets." Maddie shrank behind the couch, holding Lily close, both girls wide-eyed with fear. Atlas inched forward, hackles raised, placing himself firmly between the girls and Tuller. Ryan stepped into Tuller's path, heart pounding. "Back off. These kids don't know anything, and they're sick. You want money, you're out of luck." Tuller bared his teeth. "You're lying. Where's the safe?" He advanced, swinging the crowbar in warning. Ryan braced himself. "I'm not letting you hurt them." Tuller laughed, ugly and sharp. "You think you can stop me? You're limping. You look like you haven't slept in days." He feinted with the crowbar, testing Ryan's resolve. Atlas snarled, stepping forward, but Tuller turned the crowbar toward the dog. "Keep that mutt away from me." "Atlas, stay," Ryan said, voice trembling but steady. "We don't want to fight." But Tuller only grew more agitated, kicking at furniture, tearing books off shelves, rage building. Maddie, trembling, spotted the old radio on the mantel, the one Ryan had mentioned, decades old but still with its batteries inside. She crawled low, keeping herself between Tuller and Lily, and reached for it. Ryan saw her move, caught her eye, and gave the tiniest nod. Maddie fumbled with the dials, praying for a miracle. Static burst out, loud enough that Tuller whirled. "What are you doing?" he barked. Maddie shouted, "Help! We need help!" The signal was weak, but her cry cut through the fear, echoing through the house. Tuller lunged, grabbing Maddie's arm. Lily screamed, a piercing, wordless sound. In a split second, Atlas launched himself at Tuller, teeth flashing, body a blur of fur and muscle. The two crashed to the ground, Tuller cursing, swinging the crowbar wildly as Atlas snapped and held, refusing to back down. Ryan seized his chance, diving for the radio. He managed a frantic message through the static, his voice hoarse. "This is Officer Walker. Collier Haven Mansion. Need immediate backup. Children in danger." The radio crackled but stayed alive long enough for him to hear. "Copy. On our way," before it fizzled out. Tuller threw Atlas aside, scrambling to his feet, rage twisting his features. "You ruined everything!" He grabbed Maddie, dragging her toward the cellar stairs, crowbar raised. Atlas shook himself, blood on his fur but still standing, determined. Ryan limped after them, vision blurring with fear and adrenaline. The house was chaos. Shouts, footsteps, the girls crying. Atlas forced himself forward, battered but unbroken, following the sound of Maddie's voice down into the dark. Ryan, gasping, forced his body to keep moving. He would not let this end here. Not after all they'd survived. Down in the freezing cellar, the final confrontation was coming. But as Ryan prepared to follow, Lily's voice broke through, soft but clear. "Atlas, help!" The dog looked up. And for the first time since he lost his old partner, he knew exactly what he had to do. The mansion, battered by the storm and now by violence, became the stage for a desperate stand. One that would test every bond, every ounce of courage, and decide if hope would survive the morning. The air in the Collier Haven Mansion's cellar was colder, sharper, echoing with the sounds of the struggle above. Maddie's terrified sobs bounced off the stone walls. Tuller dragged her, one arm locked around her shoulders, the other gripping the crowbar with white knuckles. He stumbled through the shadows, frantic eyes darting for anything. Cash, a safe, some forgotten stash of hope. He wasn't looking at Maddie as a niece. She was a bargaining chip, maybe leverage. In the flickering light from Ryan's flashlight above, Tuller's silhouette twisted, monstrous. Ryan, breathless and aching from his injuries, thundered down the rickety stairs. Every step agony, but his mind clear and cold as the storm outside. Atlas barreled past him, driven by something deeper than training. The girls' cries, the scent of fear, and, above all, Lily's trembling voice echoing through the mansion. "Atlas, help!" It pulled him like a beacon. Tuller yanked Maddie into a corner. Shoving her hard against a stack of ancient boxes, she hit the ground with a choked gasp, clutching her chest. "Don't try to run, kid," he snarled, glaring as Ryan limped into view. "One more step and I'll—" "Let her go, Daryl!" Ryan shouted, voice ragged, spreading his arms as if to block all routes to the girls. "This is over! The cops are coming! You're done!" Tuller spat, swinging the crowbar at the wall, splintering old wood. "You're a washed-up cop and a broken dog handler. You don't know what it's like to have everything ripped away. That's what your world does. Chews up the weak, throws them out like trash." He jabbed the crowbar at Atlas, who growled, low and fierce. Maddie, even in terror, locked eyes with Ryan. She remembered his quiet promise. "I won't let anything happen to you." She drew a shaky breath, looking for a chance, heart pounding in her chest. Ryan advanced, arms wide, putting himself directly between Tuller and the girls. His own pain screamed at him to stop, but he forced himself on. "You want to blame somebody? Fine, blame me, but leave them alone." Tuller hesitated, conflict flickering in his eyes. But then Lily's frightened whimper broke the spell. He lunged, grabbing at her arm. Atlas barked, a deep, commanding sound, not from fear, but conviction. "Atlas, now!" Ryan shouted. For a moment, time fractured. Atlas leapt, powerful and fast, a blur of fur and muscle, colliding with Tuller before he could strike. Maddie scrambled free, pulling Lily with her, as Atlas knocked the crowbar away. Man and dog crashed to the cellar floor, Atlas biting down on Tuller's arm, not to maim, but to restrain. Tuller howled, swinging his free fist, catching Atlas on the ribs. Blood flecked the old flagstones. Ryan dove in, grabbing the crowbar and tossing it aside. He pinned Tuller's other arm, sweat pouring down his face. "It's over, Daryl. Let go." But Tuller fought with the fury of a cornered animal. He kicked, twisted, landing a wild blow to Ryan's shoulder. The old injury flared with agony, and Ryan almost buckled. Atlas, battered but determined, kept his jaws locked on Tuller's jacket, holding on with everything he had left. Maddie hugged Lily close against the far wall. "It's okay, Lily. Atlas is here. We're going to be okay." But her own chest ached, breath ragged and shallow, as fear and exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. Tuller finally buckled, pinned beneath Ryan and Atlas, eyes rolling wild with defeat and shame. "You have no idea what you've done," he hissed. "There's nothing left for me. Nothing." Ryan didn't let up, even as his own strength waned. "You're wrong, Daryl. There's always a choice, but hurting kids, hurting family, never brings anything back. Let it go." Outside, sirens wailed faintly, then louder, hope bleeding into the cold, stone room. Tuller sagged, suddenly spent, tears cutting tracks through the grime on his face. "He took everything from me. Your brother, my family, my future." Ryan's voice softened, but only just. "You still get to decide who you are even now." Atlas released his grip, panting, and limped back to Maddie and Lily. The dog's side was wet with blood, his body shaking. Maddie reached for him, hugging his neck, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, Atlas. Thank you." Suddenly, Tuller wrenched free in a last desperate burst, pushing Ryan aside and scrambling up the cellar stairs. "I'll get what's mine," he shrieked. But as he fled, Atlas tried to give chase. His body betrayed him. He collapsed, yelping as pain overtook him. Ryan let Tuller go, every instinct screaming to follow, but he saw the girls, saw Atlas, wounded and trembling, and made his choice. He ran to his friends, pulling the girls into his arms, pressing his jacket to Atlas's wound, praying it wasn't fatal. The sirens roared, doors burst open upstairs, and boots thundered down. Police officers and medics swept in. "Walker, are you all right?" "We're here. The kids are safe," Ryan called out, voice hoarse. The officers surrounded them, medics rushing to Maddie, Lily, and Atlas. Maddie wouldn't let go of the dog, sobbing as the medics worked. Lily, silent, stared at Atlas's bloody fur, her eyes wide and full of anguish. One medic gently coaxed Maddie away, checking her vitals. Another knelt by Atlas, assessing the damage. "He's hurt, but he's strong. We'll get him patched up." Ryan slumped to the cold floor, finally allowing himself to feel the pain and exhaustion. He watched as Maddie clung to Atlas's paw, Lily resting her head on the dog's flank, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. Police officers secured the house, radioing that Tuller had fled into the storm. A search party was mobilized to track him, but Ryan's focus was here on the little family clinging together in the heart of this battered, haunted mansion. The world outside was still cold and dangerous, but inside Collier Haven, something had shifted. Ryan looked at the broken faces around him. Kids, a wounded dog, and himself. and realized they were all survivors. Broken, yes, but not beaten. He squeezed Maddie's shoulder. "You were so brave," he whispered. "Atlas did it, but so did you." Maddie smiled through her tears, and for the first time, Lily reached for Ryan's hand, squeezing it tight. The community's rescue was coming. But the true rescue had happened here, in the dark, in the moment when every hope seemed lost, and love, courage, and sacrifice brought them back to the light. Hospital lights were nothing like the golden glow of a fireside. They were too bright, too clinical, but as Ryan watched Maddie rest, hooked up to a heart monitor, he felt only relief. The endless night in Collier Haven was finally over. Maddie had been in and out of consciousness on the ride in, her tiny body fighting hard, but the doctors moved fast. Now, in a borrowed sweatshirt, her hair washed and face scrubbed of fear, she looked fragile, but alive. Atlas, still bandaged, lay curled at the foot of the bed. He was not allowed in the main ward, but a sympathetic nurse had made an exception after Lily's first panic attack. The staff had quickly learned that the little girl, who had refused to speak for months, only relaxed if she could see Atlas. Even now she sat beside the dog, tiny hand gently tracing the edge of his bandages, her lips moving in silent conversation. Ryan lingered in the doorway, exhaustion sinking deeper with each hour, but a new sense of peace came with it. He spoke to the girl's aunt and a social worker, explaining everything again. The blizzard, the search, Tuller's break-in, and the struggle in the cellar. He left nothing out, his voice trembling only when he described the moment Lily spoke for the first time in months, her small voice calling for Atlas. The caseworker, Mrs. Simmons, listened closely. She was tough but fair, her eyes kind as she scribbled notes. "You saved their lives, Mr. Walker," she said quietly. "Not just last night. Maybe in a way nobody else could." Ryan didn't know how to respond. All he could think of was how broken he'd felt in that house, how powerless, and how Atlas, injured and battered, had still found the courage to protect the children. Maybe this wasn't just a rescue. Maybe it was a second chance for all of them. Later that evening, Maddie woke to the gentle beeping of monitors. She looked around, heart pounding, until she saw Lily and Atlas beside her. A nurse came in, checking her pulse, adjusting her medication. "You're a lucky girl," the nurse said softly. "Your sister's been talking about you all day." Maddie blinked in surprise. "She talked? Really?" The nurse smiled. "She says a lot of things now. She's always asking about Atlas." Tears filled Maddie's eyes. She reached for Lily, who climbed carefully onto the bed, hugging her big sister. Atlas lifted his head, thumped his tail, and watched over them both, his amber eyes full of trust. Ryan entered the room quietly. "Hey, champ," he said to Maddie. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Maddie whispered, voice hoarse but strong. "Are we safe now?" Ryan nodded, sitting by her side. "Safer than ever. Your uncle's gone. He won't hurt you again. The police are still looking for him, but you're surrounded by people who care about you. And Atlas is right here, watching over you both." Lily pressed her face into Atlas's fur. "Atlas stays?" she whispered. Ryan hesitated, glancing at the caseworker who nodded. "He can stay," he promised, heart swelling. "He's family now." Days passed in a blur of doctors, social workers, and visits from the police. Atlas's injury was not as severe as it first appeared, but he needed rest and care. Volunteers from the rescue community brought treats, blankets, and toys for the girls. Ryan fielded calls from the sheriff, reporters, even the mayor, but all he cared about was the slow healing that began in that tiny hospital room. One afternoon, as snow melted from the trees outside, Ryan made a decision. he found Mrs. Simmons in the hallway. "I want to foster the girls," he said, surprising even himself with the conviction in his voice. "I know I'm not a typical candidate. I'm a single guy, retired, not exactly perfect. But I love them. I think they belong with Atlas and me." Mrs. Simmons studied him, weighing his words, then smiled. "It won't be easy, but I think you're right. These girls need someone who understands what it means to fight for a second chance." A few days later, the girls were released into Ryan's care. They left the hospital in borrowed winter coats, holding Atlas's leash between them. The media was waiting, snapping photos, but Ryan shielded them from the glare. They returned not to the old mansion, but to Ryan's small home on the edge of town. Warm, cluttered, and filled with the scent of dog biscuits and strong coffee. Maddie settled in first, arranging her medicine on a shelf and taping drawings to her bedroom wall. Lily spent her days with Atlas, rarely more than a few feet from the dog's side. Each morning, Ryan found new words from Lily. Simple things at first, but growing every day. "Thank you, good boy, home." The house was filled with laughter, small arguments over breakfast cereal, and the kind of noise that meant life had returned. But Ryan knew they weren't the only ones in need of healing. He visited Collier Haven with a team of volunteers, clearing snow from the steps and patching up broken windows. Inspired by the mansion's history, he wrote to the family of the original owner, proposing that they turn the estate into a sanctuary for both dogs and children, somewhere broken lives could find shelter and start again. The reply was swift and generous. Funding was secured, and soon the mansion hummed with activity. Painters, builders, and dog trainers, all eager to help. The local news ran stories about Atlas, calling him a hero. Donations poured in from across the county. The girls, once alone and adrift, found themselves surrounded by a community eager to support them. And so, in the wake of a terrible winter, a new family was born. Ryan, Atlas, Maddie, and Lily, each marked by loss, each finding hope in the most unlikely place, began to build something lasting together. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. One night, as snow fell gently outside, Ryan sat by the fire, Lily curled on his lap, Maddie reading a story aloud, Atlas dozing at their feet. The house was filled with the quiet music of a new beginning, a second chance carved from the ruins, lit by the courage it took to let love in again. News of the Collier Haven rescue spread like wildfire. What began as a search for two lost children had become a story of courage, hope, and the unbreakable bond between people and their animals. Reporters flocked to town. Local newspapers ran front-page stories about Atlas the hero dog, and social media buzzed with photos of Maddie, Lily, and their loyal German shepherd. For once, the headlines weren't about tragedy, but about survival and the power of second chances. At first, Ryan was overwhelmed by the attention. He'd never liked the spotlight and preferred quiet moments with the girls and Atlas at home. But he soon realized how the story inspired others. People wanted to help, to be part of something bigger than themselves. It was as if the community, fractured and weary after a hard winter, found hope in the Collier Haven miracle. It started with a trickle. Casseroles left on Ryan's porch, care packages with hand-knit mittens and homemade cookies for the girls. Then, as the town learned about Ryan's vision to transform Collier Haven into a sanctuary, the real wave began. Volunteers arrived by the dozens, braving the mud and lingering cold to clear debris, scrub floors, and paint the battered old walls. Local contractors donated time and supplies. Kids made banners that fluttered from the porch, and the community's retired carpenters replaced broken railings on the wraparound deck. Ryan watched with disbelief as the mansion that once seemed haunted now rang with laughter, barking, and the steady hum of saws and hammers. It became a gathering place not just for lost animals, but for lost people too. Kids who needed a safe space, veterans haunted by old wounds, neighbors in need of a friend. Maddie flourished in this whirlwind of activity. Her cheeks grew rosy again, and she became the unofficial tour guide, showing newcomers around the mansion's labyrinth of rooms and hidden staircases. "This is Atlas's corner," she'd say proudly, showing off a sunlit alcove filled with dog beds and toys. She made friends with other children, some who'd faced loss like her, some just drawn to the energy of the place. She even started a scrapbook, taping newspaper clippings and Polaroid photos alongside her drawings of the rescue. Lily, still shy and soft-spoken, became Atlas's shadow. As the number of rescued dogs grew, so did her confidence. She whispered to the animals, curling up with them in the afternoons, her voice growing stronger with each passing day. To everyone's amazement, she began to help with the younger kids who visited, coaxing them to pet nervous puppies, or teaching them how to brush a dog's coat. The staff and volunteers marveled at the transformation, how a little girl who once wouldn't speak now offered comfort to others. Atlas himself wore his bandages like badges of honor. He limped for a few weeks, but soon he was running across the mansion lawn again, leading a pack of rescues in joyful games. Local kids painted a sign, "Atlas's Haven, where every soul gets a second chance." The dog became a symbol for the whole project, featured on flyers and even in a mural that adorned the front gate. One Saturday, the town held a fundraising fair. Tents filled the Collier Haven grounds, with bake sales, face painting, and a parade of dogs wearing handmade scarves. The mayor gave a short, emotional speech. "There are stories that change a town," she said, voice cracking as she looked at Ryan and the girls. "What happened here reminded us all what community really means. Collier Haven is no longer just an old house at the edge of town. It's a beacon for anyone who needs hope." Donations poured in, enough to launch not only the animal rescue but a trauma retreat program for kids and veterans. Therapists volunteered their services, teachers organized after-school reading sessions, and the local veterinarian set up regular clinics in the newly renovated barn. Meanwhile, Maddie and Lily became celebrities in the best possible way. Their story inspired letters from across the country, children sending pictures of their own pets, adults sharing tales of hardship and healing. Ryan read every letter aloud in the evenings, saving the most touching ones for Maddie's scrapbook. Lily always listened quietly, then whispered thank you to Atlas, as if he'd brought these new friends to them. But not everything was simple. The trauma of that winter night lingered, shadows sometimes creeping in at bedtime. Maddie had nightmares, waking up breathless and frightened. Lily, despite her progress, sometimes froze at loud noises or sudden movements. Ryan did his best, comforting them, letting them sleep curled up with Atlas. He knew healing was a journey, not a finish line. There were moments of uncertainty, too. Rumors swirled about Tuller. Some said he'd been spotted hitchhiking out of state. Others claimed he was hiding nearby. The police assured Ryan they were doing everything possible, but for a while he checked every shadow, double-locked every door. Only when the news broke that Tuller had been arrested after a brief, dramatic police chase 2 counties away did Ryan finally breathe freely. Justice, at last, brought a fragile sense of closure. As spring crept in, Collier Haven blossomed. Gardens planted by volunteers flourished, windows sparkled, and laughter drifted across the lawn long into the evenings. Ryan stood at the porch one afternoon, watching Maddie teach a group of kids to throw tennis balls for the dogs. Lily giggled nearby, Atlas beside her, soaking up the sun. For the first time in years, Ryan felt the weight of his grief lift, replaced by a quiet, unshakable joy. He looked around. At the friends who had become family, the mansion reborn, the girls who had survived the unthinkable. Every second chance given, every act of kindness, rippled outward. Collier Haven was no longer a place of ghosts, but of hope, built on the courage of a broken dog, two brave sisters, and the community that refused to give up on them. Night had fallen gently over Collier Haven, the kind of night when the world feels safe and close. Candles glimmered on windowsills, casting golden halos onto the porch, where Maddie, Lily, and Atlas watched fireflies flicker above the grass. The mansion's rooms buzzed with quiet conversation and the muffled laughter of children, volunteers, and neighbors lingering after a community dinner. For the first time, Ryan felt the depth of what had been rebuilt. A shelter not just for bodies, but for hearts that had once believed themselves beyond saving. He sat alone for a moment by the old bay window, his journal open on his lap, listening to the happy chaos drifting up from the garden. For days, maybe weeks, he'd been too busy for reflection. Now, in the calm, he let himself remember, to sift through the trauma and loss, and see how it shaped each of them, himself, Atlas, Maddie, Lily, and even the fractured community beyond these walls. He thought of Atlas, curled on the rug at his feet, nose twitching in a dream. When Ryan first met the German Shepherd, the dog was a ghost, wary, skittish, wounded in ways no vet could heal. Atlas had been let down by the person he trusted most, left in the wake of a botched bust, abandoned to the noise and fear of a shelter. For weeks, he flinched at every loud sound, shied away from touch. It had taken patience, quiet mornings, and countless walks for trust to begin to form. But when Maddie and Lily needed him, Atlas had risked everything. In the darkness of the cellar, with fear thick as fog, he found his courage again, not for himself, but for them. Ryan saw something familiar in that journey. He too had spent months sleepwalking through grief, unable to shake the memory of his wife, the echo of their laughter, the ache of dreams cut short. The badge that once gave him purpose now gathered dust. Only when he answered the call for the missing girls did he remember the old fire, a reason to fight, to hope, even if he failed. And in the chaos of that blizzard, kneeling in the snow, coaxing a broken dog to trust again, Ryan had rediscovered himself, piece by painful piece. The girls had their own scars. Maddie, whose heart was too fragile for the burdens she carried, learned to become the adult when her mother collapsed under grief. She'd bundled Lily against the cold, whispered brave stories, and kept the terror to herself. In the storm, every step was a battle against her own weakness, and yet she pressed on, love giving her strength she never knew she had. Lily, whose silence had once frightened everyone, now whispered to animals and people alike. Trauma had closed her world, but kindness, Atlas's gentle patience, Ryan's quiet protection, Maddie's unwavering love, had coaxed her out. It was not a miracle, but 100 small acts, the feel of a warm hand, the nuzzle of a loyal dog, the simple promise that she was not alone. As Ryan wrote in his journal, he realized the rescue wasn't just about survival. It was about transformation, the way pain, when faced together, can become the foundation for something new. Collier Haven itself was proof. Once a forgotten relic, it had been saved not by one hero, but by a patchwork of people, carpenters, teachers, veterans, children, each bringing what they could. In that sense, the mansion was more than walls and windows. It was a living testament to what community could do when it refused to give up on the lost. The night grew quieter as the children drifted to sleep and volunteers gathered their things. Ryan closed his journal and wandered outside, sitting on the steps as the air cooled. He thought of the question that haunted every rescuer. Who saves whom? Was it Ryan who'd saved Atlas, or the other way around? Had he rescued the girls, or had they returned him to the world of the living? He remembered his wife's words he'd tried to bury. You can't save everyone, but you can love the ones you find. Ryan smiled, tears stinging his eyes, realizing that the lesson wasn't about heroics or happy endings. It was about choosing, again and again, to love what's right in front of you, no matter how broken. Inside, Maddie stirred, looking for Atlas. The dog lumbered to his feet, padding over, laying his head in her lap. She stroked his ears, whispering secrets Ryan couldn't hear, but he saw the relief in her face, the peace of knowing she was safe. Lily crept down the stairs, clutching a faded photograph of the mansion's original owner, a man surrounded by dogs and smiling children. She climbed into Ryan's lap, curling close. "Why did he help all the dogs?" she asked softly. Ryan wrapped an arm around her. Maybe he knew what it felt like to be lost. Maybe he wanted everyone to have a home, just like you do now. The lesson, Ryan thought, was not about what they'd lost, but what they chose to build from the ruins. In every shadow, there was the possibility of light. In every act of kindness, a ripple that could outlast the pain. The next morning, as sunlight spilled across the yard, the mansion came alive again. Volunteers arriving, dogs barking, children running barefoot through the dew. Ryan watched it all with gratitude. Collier Haven would never be perfect, but it was enough. And as Maddie and Lily raced outside, Atlas bounding after them, Anand sent a silent thanks to every soul who had believed in second chances. Here in this patchwork family, everyone had rescued and been rescued in return. The first snow of late autumn drifted down, featherlight and silent, covering Collier Haven in a gentle white shimmer. The mansion, once battered and forgotten, stood tall and proud, a beacon on the hill, its windows glowing with life. Out on the wide front lawn, Atlas bounded through the powder, barking with joy as Maddie and Lily chased after him, bundled in bright scarves and woolen hats. Their laughter rang out, clear and strong, blending with the music of distant church bells and the low hum of a town transformed by kindness. The rescue was bustling as usual. Volunteers bustled in and out, some unloading crates of supplies from the local animal shelter, others hanging holiday decorations or mending fences along the driveway. A few of the newer rescue dogs chased each other around the garden, pausing now and then to sniff at Atlas, who had become the unofficial leader of the pack. He was fully healed, his scars hidden beneath a thick, healthy coat. No longer haunted, no longer afraid. Now simply happy, loved, and whole. Inside, Ryan sat at an old oak desk, sunlight streaming through the glass and warming his back. He finished signing a letter, his careful handwriting filling the page, addressed to the descendants of Collier Haven's original owner. In it, he shared the story of the past months, how a forgotten mansion became a sanctuary for both animals and people, how the legacy of a single act of generosity had changed countless lives, and how, every day, that legacy continued to ripple outward. Your grandfather's gift, Ryan wrote, became our foundation. Because of him, lost souls found shelter, and hope took root in places we thought were barren. He sealed the letter, placing it beside a stack of thank you notes Maddie and Lily had written to donors, volunteers, and friends. There was a quiet sense of accomplishment in the room, a feeling that, at last, The pieces of so many broken stories had come together to form something whole. Atlas nudged the door open, trotting inside with a dusting of snow on his muzzle. He stopped in front of Ryan, tail wagging, and dropped a faded tennis ball at his feet. Ryan laughed, standing and tossing the ball out into the hallway. The dog sprinted after it, nearly colliding with Maddie as she skidded around the corner, Lily trailing close behind. The three of them tumbled in a pile of giggles and happy barking. For a moment, the world was perfect. That afternoon, as the rescue's grand reopening celebration approached, the Collier Haven lawn filled with families, kids, and neighbors. The mayor gave a speech thanking Ryan, the girls, and the volunteers for breathing life back into an old legend. A brass plaque was unveiled beside the front gate. Collier Haven Rescue and Retreat, where second chances begin. Ryan took a quiet moment to look out over the crowd, at Maddie running with a new friend, at Lily helping a shy boy feed treats to an anxious puppy, at Atlas weaving between them all, the hero dog whose courage had saved so many. He felt the gravity of what they'd built, a community bound not by blood, but by a shared choice to reach out, to rescue, to give hope. Later, as the sun set and the first stars began to prick the darkening sky, Ryan gathered Maddie and Lily on the porch. They sat close, wrapped in a blanket, Atlas's big head resting in Lily's lap. Ryan pulled from his jacket a copy of the letter he'd written, reading a passage aloud for them. "In the end," he said softly, "it's not what we've lost, but what we choose to build from the ruins that defines us. We cannot erase the pain or undo what's been done, but we can turn every scar into a story, every heartbreak into a chance for someone else. That's what Collier Haven is about, choosing hope every single day." Lily snuggled against him. "Do you think there are more lost kids and dogs out there?" she whispered. Ryan nodded. "There always are. And as long as there's someone willing to look, to help, to not give up, there's always hope. Sometimes we rescue them, sometimes they rescue us." Atlas thumped his tail as if he agreed, looking from Ryan to Maddie and back again, his gaze full of loyalty and trust. As darkness fell, the mansion glowed with warmth and promise. Inside, people danced and shared stories. Outside, children played in the snow, their laughter carrying far into the night. Maddie looked up at the stars, then at Ryan. "Are we really a family now?" Ryan hugged them both. "Yes, the kind of family you build, not the kind you're born into. And that can be the strongest of all." The narrator's voice echoes, gentle, inviting. "Maybe you've felt lost. Maybe you've watched the world close its doors, wondered if you'd ever find your way home again. The truth is, we all have broken places. But hope isn't about what we've lost. It's about what we do next. Who will you reach for? Who will you rescue, and how might that change you in return?" As the celebration continued, Ryan watched the lights of Collier Haven shine into the night, a symbol of second chances, of community, of love earned and given. He thought of the lonely boy he'd been, the grief-stricken husband, the lost girls, and the battered dog who had all, in their own way, saved one another. He stood, smiling as the girls called him to join them in the snow. He tossed Atlas another ball, and together they ran toward the light, their laughter rising above the wind as Collier Haven stood watch, forever a refuge for those who dare to believe that even the most wounded hearts can find their way home. And to you, listener, remember, every act of kindness can start a rescue, and every rescue can change a life. Like, follow, and share this story if you believe in second chances. Who knows? Maybe you're the next person to make the world a little brighter,